Heath versus Ronnie Coleman, the ultimate bodybuilding debate. In the world of professional bodybuilding, few discussions spark more passion than comparing champions from different eras. At the center of this debate are two of the sport's most dominant figures, Heath and Ronnie Coleman. Both athletes defined their generations, stacked up title after title, and inspired thousands of gym-goers worldwide. But when fans, and sometimes athletes themselves, ask whether Heath at his absolute best could defeat Ronnie Coleman in his prime, opinions split sharply. Understanding their greatness. Ronnie Coleman stands as one of the most legendary figures in bodybuilding history, winning a record-tying 8 Mr. Olympia titles consecutively from 1998 to 2005. His era was defined by unprecedented mass combined with elite conditioning, earning him enthusiastic acclaim and the nickname, The King. Heath, on the other hand, dominated the sport more than a decade later, capturing 7 Mr. Olympia titles from 2011 to 2017, tying him with Arnold Schwarzenegger for second most victories ever. Heath brought a different aesthetic, extreme muscle density, tight conditioning, and a balanced, detailed physique that many call the modern perfect package. The claim, Phil's best versus Ronnie's prime. Recently, on social media platforms and bodybuilding forums, there's been chatter purporting that Heath believes his peak physique could defeat prime Ronnie Coleman in a hypothetical head-to-head. Posts in Facebook groups or Instagram reels circulate versions of this claim, suggesting Heath said as much when prompted about a fantasy matchup. However, it's important to stress that there's no well-documented public interview or direct quote from Heath himself where he explicitly says, "My best could beat prime Ronnie." The existing content seems to be fan interpretation or social posts summarizing opinions rather than direct quotes from Heath with verifiable sources. Still, it reflects an ongoing sentiment among fans that Heath's physique could hold its own or even be competitive with Coleman's peak. What is true is that Heath has publicly spoken about his confidence and champion mindset, focusing on being his best rather than comparing himself obsessively to others. In interviews, he's emphasized working to constantly elevate his conditioning and presentation rather than obsess over another era's greats. Arguments in favor of Heath's hypothetical edge. Supporters of the idea that Heath could compete with, or beat, Coleman at his best point to several factors. 1. Modern conditioning and detail. Bodybuilders in Heath's era often incorporate more refined conditioning and muscle separation compared to the mass-focused styles of the 1990s and early 2000s. Heath's crowd-pleasing muscle detail and symmetry are frequently cited as traits that could close the gap between him and the bigger mass monsters like Coleman. 2. Aesthetic flow and balance. Heath's physique, with its smooth transitions from muscle group to muscle group, and a tighter waistline, has been labeled more complete in terms of aesthetic appeal. Fans argue this could sway judges in a theoretical head-to-head, especially in a sport where presentation matters. 3. Champion mentality. Heath has spoken about his competitive mindset, focusing on being his own best version, improving and refining rather than living in the shadow of other competitors. Many see this as a sign that if he were placed in that legendary era, he might rise to the occasion. Arguments why Ronnie Coleman might still have the edge. Contrast to the "Heath could do it" camp, many longtime fans and insiders believe Coleman's physical dominance in his prime would still keep him ahead in most comparisons. 1. Sheer mass and conditioning. Even fans who admire Heath acknowledge that prime Coleman brought mass and conditioning on a scale that remains awe-inspiring. His ability to combine gigantic muscular size with razor-sharp conditioning was virtually unmatched in his era. 2. Structural advantages. Because Coleman was not only massive but also extremely proportionate for his size, traditional bodybuilding criteria, size, symmetry, conditioning, all aligned with his strengths. Many fans assert that, given how judges historically favored similar builds, Coleman's combination would still likely dominate. 3. Era differences. The era in which Coleman competed saw relatively fewer competitors with comparable statistical muscle mass, meaning he was often on a plateau above his competitors. Heath's era had more focused emphasis on aesthetics and conditioning, so some believe the two styles don't align easily in direct comparison. Why this debate matters. Even if Heath hasn't definitively claimed he could beat prime Coleman, the very idea reflects the complexity of comparing athletes across eras. It isn't just about size versus aesthetics, it's also about how the sport evolved, how standards changed, and how fans project modern ideals onto legendary past performances. Moreover, it stimulates discussion around what makes a great champion. Is it unprecedented size? Unmatched conditioning? Symmetry and balance? Or is it something less measurable, like presence, charisma, and influence on the sport? These are questions that have no single correct answer, which is why debates like Heath versus Coleman continue to captivate the bodybuilding world.